The twin suns of Varela glowed gently in the pale lavender sky, casting golden light on the towering spires of the royal palace. Flowers from across the galaxy had been flown in, blooming in colors no human eye had ever seen. Musicians played, softly from floating platforms, and servants rushed back and forth through crystal corridors. It was the day of Princess Thalara's wedding, the most celebrated event in recent Virelan history. She stood in front of a giant mirror in her chamber, wearing a wedding robe woven with threads that shimmered like starlight. Her long silver hair had been styled with care, her face calm, but her eyes reflected worry. She had never met her groom in person. Prince Veron of the Zadran Empire was said to be proud and powerful, and their union was arranged to bring peace between the two ancient empires. Her heart beat quickly as she turned to her handmaid. "Are the guests seated?" The maid nodded with a nervous smile. "Yes, Princess, the Hall of Stars is full. All 12 royal families are present. Even the ambassadors from Earth have taken their seats." Thalara nodded. She was used to wearing a mask of calm. She had spent years preparing for this moment. She had been raised to serve her people, even if it meant marrying a stranger. This was duty. This was honor. But deep inside, she still hoped for something more. Maybe he will smile at me. Maybe he will speak to me kindly. She took a deep breath and stepped forward. The doors of her chamber opened, and the golden path rolled out before her. Every step echoed in the silent palace. Her guards and servants bowed. The floating cameras turned to follow her. The Hall of Stars was breathtaking. 1,000 guests stood beneath a glass ceiling that showed the heavens above. The altar was placed on a floating platform, surrounded by fountains of light and music. Nobles, rulers, and warriors from across the galaxy waited in respectful silence. Thalara reached the center and stood alone before the altar. But something was wrong. There was no groom. A whisper moved through the crowd like a cold wind. "Where is the prince?" someone murmured. "He was seen leaving the planet an hour ago." Another said. "No, he couldn't have." Thalara's voice caught in her throat. The master of ceremonies stepped forward awkwardly. "There has been a change. Prince Veron has departed. He left no message." Gasps filled the hall. The music stopped. The lights dimmed. Thalara stood frozen, the entire galaxy watching her in silence. Her father, Emperor Ryan, stood slowly and stared at his daughter. His voice was loud, cold, and cruel. "Shame. You were not worthy enough to keep him. This disgrace falls on your name." And then, to everyone's horror, the emperor turned and walked away, leaving his daughter standing alone at the altar. 2 nobles followed. The guests filed out, many shaking their heads, some even laughing softly as they whispered behind their hands. Within minutes, the grand hall was nearly empty. Thalara remained where she stood, eyes wide, heart broken. She had been rejected, abandoned, humiliated in front of the galaxy. She felt like stone. Her legs shook, her hands trembled. A camera drone hovered in front of her face, still broadcasting her image to millions. She looked at it for a moment, then whispered something no microphone caught. The drone blinked and floated away. Far in the back of the hall, a single man remained seated. He was not royalty. He wasn't dressed in noble robes. He wore a standard Earth Federation technician's suit, simple and dark gray. His name was Cole Jansen, and he had come to Varela to fix satellite relay systems. He hadn't expected to be invited to the wedding, but as one of the few Earth humans on the planet, he had been given a seat in the back out of respect. And now, while the rest of the crowd had turned their backs, he sat quietly watching her. He didn't know the princess. He had only seen her once, walking past in a corridor. But he saw the pain in her eyes, the way her hands clenched, the way she tried not to cry. And it reminded him of something he had seen on Earth long ago, a girl left standing in the rain at a school dance. Without thinking, he stood up and stepped forward. Thalara noticed movement and turned. Her vision was blurry. At first she thought it was a servant, but it was not. It was a human. He walked up the long golden aisle toward her, Her guards moved to block him, but she raised a hand. "Let him come," she said softly. Cole stopped, a few steps away from her, and bowed respectfully. "Your Highness, I know I'm not supposed to be here, but I didn't want you to be alone." Thalara blinked. No one, not even her closest family, had said anything like that. Everyone had left her. This stranger, a human technician, had stayed. "You are bold," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm just doing what feels right," Cole replied. A long silence passed between them. Thalara looked around the empty hall. "They all left, even my father. But I didn't," Cole said quietly. "And I won't." Her voice cracked as she asked, "Why?" He looked into her eyes. "Because no one deserves to be abandoned like that. You stood here with dignity. I saw it. You didn't cry, you didn't scream, you just stood tall. That matters." Her lips trembled and she looked away. "You don't even know me." "No," he said, "but I'd like to. If you'd let me." Thalara looked back at him with searching eyes. There was no mocking in his expression, no pity, only something calm, real. She took a small step forward. "You say that now. But would you say it at this altar?" Cole's eyebrows lifted. "You mean?" She gave a faint, sad smile. "If I asked you now, would you say I do?" He paused. Then softly, but clearly, he answered, "I would." And in that moment, though the hall was nearly empty, something in the universe quietly shifted. Princess Thalara stood still for a moment after hearing his words. "I would." They echoed inside her like a spark in the dark, gentle, unexpected, but warm. No one else had spoken to her with such honesty that day. Not the nobles, not the, priests, not even her own family. But this human, this technician, had looked her in the eye and said he wouldn't leave. "Are you serious?" she asked softly, almost in disbelief. Cole gave a small smile. "I don't know much about royal customs or alien ceremonies, but if saying I do would help you feel less alone right now, then yes, I'm serious." Thalara felt her breath shake. She didn't even know this man's full name. He had no noble blood, no crown, no position. Yet something about his calm presence steadied her. The guards nearby looked at each other with confusion, waiting for an order. One of them finally whispered, "Your Highness, should we escort him out?" She didn't respond to them. Instead, she turned to Cole. "You may come with me." And with that, she walked away from the altar, her heavy ceremonial robes trailing behind her. Cole followed silently, past the rows of empty chairs, past the camera drones now dim and idle, and into the quiet of the palace. The corridor beyond the Hall of Stars was wide and filled with soft glowing lights. Servants avoided looking at her. Some bowed and quickly left. Others whispered as she passed. Thalara led him into a private chamber, simple but beautiful, with tall windows and a clear view of the twin suns beginning to set. She sat down slowly, removing the golden veil from her head. Her silver hair fell over her shoulders. She looked tired. "Sit," she said, motioning to the chair across from her. Cole obeyed, trying to keep his hands from fidgeting. He was still in shock himself. He had never expected to talk to a princess, much less be standing in a private royal room with one. The silence between them stretched for a moment. Thalara finally broke it. "You don't know me. You don't owe me anything." "Why did you really say that?" Cole thought carefully. "Because I've seen what pain looks like when no one steps in to help. Back home on Earth, I lost someone close to me. She was left at a hospital by her own family. I was just a stranger in the waiting room, but I stayed. I talked to her, I made her smile. She said that one small moment made her feel seen again." Thalara listened closely. Her voice was quieter now. "Do you think I can feel seen again, too?" "I already see you," he said. "Not as a princess, just as someone who deserves better." She blinked slowly. Her eyes were glassy with held-back emotion. Earth humans, she whispered, are strange. You wear no armor, no wealth, no pride, yet you stand stronger than most. Cole chuckled a little. That's kind of our thing. Thalara smiled, just barely, but it was the first real smile she had shown all day. Later that night, word began to spread. The Virellan royal court was buzzing with disbelief. Some nobles demanded that Thalara be hidden from the public for bringing shame to the crown. Others feared the breakdown of the alliance with the Zadran Empire. But the most surprising rumor was about the human technician who stood by her side, when no one else did. The story traveled quickly, from palace halls to military barracks to common markets, and then out across the planetary network. The abandoned wedding had become the most watched broadcast in recent history, and now a strange new scene had been added, the forgotten bride, and the human who didn't walk away. By morning, Thalara stood once again in front of the royal council. The old chamber was cold and filled with high-ranking officials in dark robes, their faces stern. The emperor, her father, sat at the head. "You are summoned," he said, "to answer for your actions." Thalara stood tall. "Which actions, father? Being rejected or being shown kindness by someone you consider lesser? You bring disgrace," the emperor said coldly. "And now the galaxy mocks our name." Thalara looked straight into his eyes. The galaxy saw what happened. They saw a princess abandoned by power and saved by honor. This human showed more strength than those who carry swords and wear crowns. A murmur moved through the chamber. The emperor frowned. "Do you intend to continue this embarrassment?" "Yes," she replied, her voice firm. "I wish to honor the man who offered me dignity. I invoke the right of the gauntlet." Gasps filled the room. The right of the gauntlet was an ancient law, forgotten by many but still valid. It stated that anyone who completed the royal trials of worthiness could stand as consort to a Virellan royal, no matter their blood or background. "You wish a human to walk the gauntlet?" one counselor asked in disbelief. "I do," she said. The emperor's voice dropped. "And if he fails?" "Then I remain alone. By choice." Cole was called into the chamber. He stood before them, still wearing his technician suit, now freshly cleaned. He had been briefed quickly by one of Thalara's handmaids, but he still didn't fully understand what the right of the gauntlet was. "You are Cole Jansen," the emperor said. "A citizen of Earth. No title, no land, no heritage." "That's right," Cole answered calmly. "And yet you would stand beside my daughter? You would carry the burden of her name?" Cole looked at Thalara. She gave him a silent nod. "I would," he said simply. The emperor leaned back. "Then you shall face the gauntlet." The next day, thousands gathered to watch. The royal gauntlet was not a test of battle. It was a trial of patience, wisdom, and emotional strength. It was designed to test a person's values, not their sword skills. Cole faced 3 trials. First, he was placed in a chamber where cruel voices echoed around him, words of insult, lies, and temptation. But he remained silent, unmoved. Second, he was given a puzzle made from ancient star charts and told to solve it under pressure. He didn't panic. He took his time, and he found the pattern. Third, he was shown a hologram of Thalara, alone, crying, rejected. He was asked to speak to her image, knowing millions watched. He said one sentence, "You are not alone anymore." The chamber fell silent, and then the voice of the keeper of tradition echoed, "He has passed." Back in the palace, as night fell again, Thalara met him in the quiet of her garden. The air smelled of star lilies and the sky shimmered with soft colors. "You passed the gauntlet," she said gently. "I didn't do it to win," Cole replied. "I did it because I didn't want you to stand alone again." Thalara reached out and took his hand. "And now," she said softly, "I choose to stand with you." The next morning, the palace of Virella was unusually quiet. No horns, no dancing, no cheering nobles. But something important was happening inside. In a small garden surrounded by crystal trees and glowing water paths, a new wedding altar had been prepared. It wasn't as grand as the Hall of Stars. There were no banners of gold or walls filled with royal guests. But the air felt lighter, more honest. Thalara stood once again in a wedding robe. This time it was not heavy with jewels and tradition. Instead, it was made of soft white silk. Her hair was tied back in a gentle braid, and her crown was replaced by a small silver band. Cole stood beside her, wearing formal robes given to him by the palace, a simple gray and white outfit with the symbol of unity stitched over his chest. He felt nervous, not because of the cameras or the royal presence, but because of what this moment meant. He wasn't marrying a stranger. He was making a promise to someone he truly respected. Across from them stood the officiator, a wise elder, who had served the royal family for 50 years. His eyes held no judgment, only curiosity and calm. "Do you both come here by choice?" the elder asked. Thalara looked at Cole. "I do." Cole looked back at her with a soft smile. "I do." The elder lifted his hand and light sparkled in the air above them. It was a traditional Varellan bond sign, a mix of science and custom. When the light touched both of them, it would mark the beginning of their shared path. The moment the light passed over them, a soft hum filled the garden. The marriage was sealed. Far away, in hidden royal chambers, many nobles watched the private ceremony through secure broadcasts. Some scoffed, some were silent, a few smiled quietly. Across the galaxy, reactions were even louder. News of the wedding spread like fire. Princess marries human technician. Abandoned bride chooses Earthman over royalty. New chapter for Varela begins with an unexpected groom. But more than the headlines, it was the image of Cole and Thalara standing side by side that captured hearts. They didn't look like two people chasing power or fame. They looked peaceful, strong in a quiet way. And soon people across planets began talking, not about disgrace, but about dignity. Back in the palace, Cole and Thalara sat together in the quiet garden where the ceremony had just ended. The light of the twin suns bathed the stones in gold. "You still seem calm," Thalara said, sipping a cup of starfruit tea. Cole chuckled. "Honestly, I feel like I've walked into a dream and forgot to wake up." She smiled. "You didn't walk in. You were invited." He raised an eyebrow. "I thought I just stumbled in while fixing a relay panel." She laughed softly, and for a moment, all the weight of royal duty seemed to vanish from her eyes. "You're different from anyone I've known," she said. "Most people see me as a crown, a name, a way to gain power. But you saw a person." "I just did what I thought was right," Cole replied. "Sometimes doing the right thing surprises people." Thalara looked up at the sky. Maybe the galaxy needs more surprises like that. Later that evening, they attended their first royal dinner as husband and wife. The grand dining hall wasn't as crowded as usual. Many nobles still stayed away, unsure how to react to the marriage. But those who did attend were more open-minded. Some were curious. Others watched silently. One elder noble, a woman named Tervina, stood up and spoke in a clear voice. "I was there when the princess was abandoned. I did nothing. I looked away. Today, I saw her stand proud again, because of the courage of one human man. I was wrong to stay silent then. I will not stay silent now. May their union remind us that kindness is strength." She bowed to the couple, and others slowly followed. For the first time, Cole understood how powerful a single act of honesty could be. He hadn't tried to impress anyone. He had just stood beside someone when they needed it most. And now, that small moment had started something bigger than he ever imagined. That night, Thalara and Cole walked through the moonlit palace corridors. There were no guards trailing behind them, just silence and soft light from the lanterns. They stopped at the balcony that overlooked the city. "Do you regret any of this?" Cole asked quietly. Thalara leaned on the railing. "Not one moment." She looked at him. "You gave me back my voice when I had lost it. Not through speeches or gifts, but just by staying when everyone else left. Cole smiled. You don't owe me anything. I know, she replied. But I still choose you. A soft wind passed between them. I was supposed to be a symbol of peace between two empires, she continued. But maybe this is a better symbol, a real one. A princess and a mechanic, Cole said with a grin. Sounds like something out of an old Earth story. Thalara laughed. Maybe we'll give the galaxy a new story to tell. In the weeks that followed, more messages began arriving at the palace. Not from rulers or armies, but from ordinary people. Messages from young girls who had been cast aside by tradition. From workers who had been told their kindness was weakness. From humans and aliens alike who had found hope in the image of a princess and a common man choosing respect over pride. One message stood out. It came from a boy on a small mining moon. He had drawn a picture with crayons, of Cole standing beside Thalara, both smiling. His message read, "Thank you for showing us that real courage is being kind when no one else is." Thalara held the drawing to her heart. "That," she whispered, "is why I said, I do." The soft hum of morning swept across the Virion capital as sunlight poured into the royal chambers. For the first time in many days, Princess Thalara woke up with a sense of calm. She no longer carried the weight of shame on her shoulders. Beside her, Cole stood near the balcony holding a steaming cup of tea, watching the sun rise over a city that had once whispered against them. Thalara walked up beside him, her long robe dragging softly on the floor. "You're awake early again," Cole smiled. "Back on Earth, I worked early shifts. Old habit. Also, these sunrises, they're something else." Thalara leaned against him, her silver hair catching the golden light. "The skies are beautiful here, but they never felt warm to me. Not until recently." They stood in silence for a moment, looking out over a city that was slowly changing, just like them. That day, they had their first official appearance as a royal couple. A public address had been arranged in the grand courtyard, broadcast across the planet and beyond. A few weeks ago, such a crowd would have gathered only to mock Thalara's fall from grace. But now, something different was happening. As they stepped out onto the balcony, thousands of citizens gathered below. Some waved banners, not of houses or empires, but of unity. Others held hand-drawn signs with messages like, "Stand with honor. Kindness is royal. Respect has no rank." Cole glanced at Thalara, nervous. "Are you sure I should speak too?" "You must," she said gently. "They need to hear your voice, not as a king or warrior, but as a human." Thalara stepped forward first. Her voice echoed strong and clear across the courtyard. "I once thought I needed a crown to be respected. I was wrong. Respect comes not from rank, but from action. I was left alone on my wedding day. My own people turned away from me, but a visitor from another world chose to stay. Not for power, not for fame, but because it was right." She turned toward Cole. "And now, I ask the man who said I do to speak." Cole stepped forward slowly. His voice wasn't trained, like Thalara's, but it was honest. "I'm not special," he began. "I'm just a worker from Earth. I fix machines and solve problems. But when I saw what happened to Princess Thalara, I didn't see royalty. I saw someone being hurt. And I believe no matter what world you come from, no one deserves to face pain alone." The crowd was quiet at first. Then applause began. It started small, then grew louder. People clapped not because of fancy words, but because they understood. And, in that moment, Cole was no longer a stranger. He was respected. Back inside, the palace staff had begun acting differently too. Servants who once avoided Cole now greeted him with warmth. Guards who once rolled their eyes now stood taller in his presence. The head steward even began referring to him as Consort Jansen, though Cole still asked everyone to just call him by his first name. Despite the growing respect, Cole remained humble. He still helped fix broken equipment around the palace. He still talked to workers in the kitchens, sat with scribes, and offered to carry items for elderly staff. He hadn't changed, but the way people looked at him had. One day, a young palace scribe named Elira approached him quietly. "Sir Cole," she said shyly. He smiled. "Just Cole is fine. What's up?" "I just wanted to say, thank you. My little brother was bullied at school for being too quiet. After he saw your speech, he said he wanted to be like you." Cole was touched. "Tell him being kind is never a weakness." Elira nodded. "He's already trying." Meanwhile, in the royal council chamber, the older nobles were still divided. Some believed Thalara and Cole's union was dangerous. Others saw it as a sign of progress. One noble stood and said, "The people love them now. They've given our planet hope after years of cold alliances and strict rules." Another grumbled, "Hope doesn't win wars." But the high scholar, a wise elder who rarely spoke, finally raised her voice. "You all forget," she said, "that wars begin where compassion ends, and this human showed more courage than half our noble houses." Silence followed. It was clear, change was coming, whether they liked it or not. Later that week, a surprising visitor arrived at the palace. It was Ambassador Renar, a representative of the Zadran Empire, the very empire whose prince had abandoned Thalara. He was tall, dressed in black and silver robes, his face unreadable. He requested a private meeting with Thalara and Cole. Inside the grand meeting chamber, Renar bowed. "Princess Human Consort." Cole nodded politely. "Ambassador." Renar took a moment before speaking. "I bring words not of war, but of apology. Prince Veron acted out of pride and selfishness. Our empire does not support what he did. Many were ashamed, including me." Thalara's expression was calm. "And what does your empire want now?" Renar looked at both of them. "Peace. Real peace. Not through marriage or forced bonding, but through understanding. Your union has reminded many of us what true diplomacy looks like." Cole tilted his head. "So, no threats?" Renar smiled faintly. "No threats. Only hope." And just like that, what had once been a failed alliance became a new chance for diplomacy. That evening, Cole and Thalara walked through the palace garden under the starlight. Flowers glowed softly along the stone paths, and the night air carried a gentle warmth. "You changed things," Thalara said quietly. Cole looked at her. "We changed things." She nodded. "Still, I sometimes wonder what would have happened if you hadn't stayed that day." Cole squeezed her hand gently. "You would have stood tall anyway. You were strong before I ever showed up." She smiled. "Maybe, but I didn't feel it. Not until someone reminded me I was still worth something." They stood in silence, gazing at the stars. Above them, a new constellation had been named by the royal astronomers. They called it the Steadfast Star. And it wasn't named after a warrior or a king, it was named after a human who stayed. The capital of Virella had changed. Where once statues of ancient kings and battle heroes stood tall, now a new statue had been added in the central square. It was not made of gold, nor did it show a warrior with a sword. Instead, it showed a man in simple clothes, standing beside a royal woman, their hands joined, both looking forward. The plaque below it read, "Unity begins with a choice." Cole stood quietly before the statue, his hands in his pockets. The air around him was filled with soft chatter from visitors. Some were humans from Earth. Others were aliens of all kinds. Tour groups passed by, and children pointed up with curious eyes. Behind him, Thalara approached, wearing a light cloak. "Still strange seeing your face in stone." He smiled. "I still don't think I look like that." She chuckled. "The artist said he made your jaw stronger to match your bravery." Cole laughed. "I think he overestimated both." They stood, side by side for a moment, watching people take pictures and leave flower offerings. One girl, no older than 10, approached shyly and handed Thalara a folded note. Thalara accepted it with a warm smile. As the girl ran off, Cole asked, "What does it say?" Thalara opened the note slowly. Inside were just 3 words. "You gave hope." Her fingers tightened on the paper. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. Back at the palace, preparations were underway for a major event, the Galactic Unity Summit. Leaders, ambassadors, and scholars from more than 20 worlds were arriving to witness a new kind of agreement. It was not about land or weapons. It was about understanding. Cole wasn't supposed to speak at the summit. He had said that many times. "I'm not a leader," he told the planners. "I'm just a guy who made a choice." But the galaxy didn't see it that way anymore. Talara placed her hand on his shoulder before the summit. "You don't have to be perfect, just be real." He nodded. The Grand Hall of Light was packed. Beings from every known planet sat in wide rows. Even species that had once refused to sit in the same room now sat side by side. Cole stepped up to the center platform. The lights dimmed. The cameras rolled. Silence stretched across the chamber. He cleared his throat. "Hello. I'm Cole Jansen. I'm not a noble. I'm not trained in politics. I come from a small town on Earth. I fix things. That's my job. And a few weeks ago, I stayed behind at a wedding because someone looked like they needed a friend." He looked across the crowd. "I didn't plan on changing anything. But somehow that one moment led to this. So maybe it's not about being powerful. Maybe it's just about doing the right thing when it matters most." He paused. "If this galaxy wants to move forward, then maybe it's time we stopped asking what species someone is or what title they carry. Maybe we should ask, are they kind? Do they listen? Will they stand by you when things go wrong?" He finished simply. "That's the future I believe in. I hope you do too." For a moment there was silence. Then, applause. From every corner. Some stood. Others cheered in their own languages. And somewhere in the middle, Thalara smiled with pride. In the weeks that followed, changes began rippling across the stars. Small planets that had long been ignored were given a voice in the council. Trade routes opened between species once at war. Even the Zadran Empire, once cold and proud, sent a message of friendship to Earth. More importantly, people everywhere, humans, aliens, royals, and workers, began to believe that small acts of kindness could lead to something greater. In one mining colony, workers started a tradition called the Second Promise, where they honored those who helped others without being asked. In another world, schools taught a new subject called Unity Studies, based on the story of Thalara and Cole. Back on Varela, life was slower again. One evening, Thalara and Cole walked the gardens behind the palace, the stars above glowing, soft and steady. A gentle breeze moved through the trees and lanterns lit their path. "You know," Cole said, "I never asked you what you thought of Earth." Thalara raised an eyebrow. "You mean the place that sent a technician who broke into my wedding and ruined centuries of tradition?" He chuckled. "That one." She smiled. "I think Earth did something unexpected. Something wonderful. They stopped by a small bench near a crystal pond. The reflection of the stars shimmered on the water. "Do you ever miss your old life?" Thalara asked. Cole thought for a moment. "Sometimes. The quiet, the simple work. But I found something here I never expected. Purpose." Thalara leaned her head against his shoulder. "You've given that to many others too, even me." They sat in silence for a long while, the sound of the wind and soft water filling the air. Then Thalara whispered, "Do you remember what I looked like that day? At the altar?" He nodded. "Yes, you looked strong even when everything was falling apart." She turned to him. "Do you remember what I said when I asked you if you'd say, 'I do'?" Cole smiled. "You said I was either brave or foolish." "And now?" she asked playfully. He kissed her forehead. "Now I know it was both. And I'd do it all over again." The galaxy didn't forget the day of the failed royal wedding, but it remembered something more important. The moment a human said, "I do," not for power but for compassion. And that one choice, simple, quiet, and true, began a new chapter in the story of the stars.